Mike, it's all too often that we end up talking about hockey when we do these podcasts. I think this is a very Steve Gravel episode because we're talking about the Ontario innovation ecosystem, which is near and dear to my heart and near and dear to your heart, of course. But today, of course, we're joined by Claudia Krywiak, who is the president and CEO of Ontario Centre of Innovation, or OCI. Some of you older folks like me would recognize that more as OCE, which was the former name of OCI. Same great people, same great mission. But we are really happy to have Claudia on the show today to talk about her journey as well as OCI and, of course, OCI Discovery X, which is back this year, which is the annual leading idea to commercialization conference in Canada, I would say.
I would agree. And again, I don't want to step on the praise I'm about to heap on to Claudia, but for the record, we don't talk about hockey that often on that podcast. I would implore the listeners to give us feedback and say that
check the tape.
This is not a Mike Camito hockey podcast. But anyway,
no.
I think
it was in jest, of course.
I know. But no, Claudia was great. And I think you picked up on this, and I felt it as well, like her enthusiasm and her commitment to the ecosystem and to OCI is infectious. Like as the conversation got on, again, it got me fired up all over again about the work that we do here as part of the Ontario innovation ecosystem. Again, I think Cambrian is lucky to be a part of this great network. And then, of course, though, like I am really excited for Discovery, and I mean that. I think it's one of those events where there is a literal buzz, like when you get into the building. We're at a different venue this year, but again, I think they're bringing back that same energy and that same buzz. And I really am looking forward to seeing what that impact will be like on two of our, folks from our team who've never experienced that before. Again, it's for us, this is like going to be like old times, I think, in many ways, but I think for them, it's going to be a new experience. I'm looking forward to seeing this new era of Discovery X and obviously being a part of it, with our live podcast as well.
Yeah. Well, I think with that, we're going to go to Claudia. I'll introduce the listeners to her if they don't already know her. Claudia Krywiak is the president and CEO of OCI, as I mentioned, which is a non-for-profit organization that accelerates the development, commercialization, and adoption of new technologies. As a champion of innovation in Ontario and across Canada, Claudia has been with OCI since 2011. She has actively promoted innovation as a key driver of competitiveness, productivity, and economic growth. Her leadership covers a broad range of initiatives, which include artificial intelligence, autonomous and electric vehicles, 5G and next generation networks, cybersecurity, and clean tech. Previously, Dr. Krywiak was the vice president of business development at Mitacs, and she started her career at Bruker Corporation, enabling scientists to make breakthrough discoveries, as she'll mention in a second. And Claudia also serves on the board of directors for the Accelerator Center in Waterloo, which is now a world-renowned accelerator for new business ideas coming from academia in the Waterloo region. And with that, we'll now go to Claudia Krywiak. All right, and we're back, and we're joined by President and CEO of OCI, Claudia Krywiak. Claudia, thanks so much for joining the Unlikely Innovators today.
My pleasure. Really looking forward to this discussion.
Yeah, and we have people on, and the name of the show is Unlikely Innovators, and I think it's because of the winding road that innovators end up taking as their career unfolds before them. We did a bit of digging, and the extent of the digging was on your LinkedIn profile, essentially. And we noticed that you have a background, like a well-traveled background in chemistry. And what I think we wanted to kick things off was, were you always drawn to chemistry? And was it always something you thought you'd make a career of early on? Was that something, when you think of yourself as a little girl, was that something you were drawn to?
So that's interesting. I would say yes and no. So on the yes side, when I think back to when I was a little kid, like I kid you not, I would take like mouthwash and toothpaste and some other things like dish soap and mix it up in the garage, and things would bubble and stuff like that. And when I look back, I'm like, yeah, I was always interested in chemistry. But when I finished high school, I didn't really know what I wanted to do. I was always interested in science and math, but I was also interested in lots of other things like as well, like art and writing. So when I went to university, I thought, okay, I'm going to keep my options open. And the best way in my mind to keep my options open was I'll take the science courses because it's going to be easier to kind of like If I want to switch out of science, it's easier to do that rather than kind of trying to get back into science. So I kept keeping my options open until I found myself one day actually doing a PhD in chemistry. And then I decided, okay, I think I want to study chemistry. So yeah, I think I was always naturally drawn to it. The kind of hands-on experimenting on the lab bench piece was there right from the beginning.
Yeah, I could definitely, I remember like mixing like dish soap and my grandfather's cologne together and trying. I honestly thought I was going to be like a fragrance chemist when I grew up. I mean, but I definitely, that resonated with me for sure, especially the bubbling.
Yeah, indeed, indeed.
You know, and Claudia, we're going to talk about your role, obviously, as president and CEO of OCI a little bit later. But, you know, one of the things we often ask our guests, especially when they're coming from a science background and now they're in the other side of the innovation world where they're helping to facilitate innovation and broker those partnerships. Can you maybe talk a little about what it was like transitioning like from the lab bench, as you mentioned, into maybe, you know, more of that boardroom setting or having some of those partnership discussions where you're now having to, you know, maybe still explain that science, but in a different way because you're now, you know, talking to potential investors, you're talking to the government,
Yep.
and how you kind of navigated that world, you know, to the one you're in now.
Sure. So when I started my PhD, I was 100% convinced I want to be an academic researcher.
Mm-hmm.
I want to work in the lab. I want to publish articles and I want to have a research group. And then when I finished my PhD, like literally on the day I defended, I said to myself, there's no way I can work in academia. And so I wanted to find opportunities in industry, still kind of on the lab bench side. So out of my PhD, I ended up getting work as an applications chemist for a large multinational company that made high-end analytical instrumentation for research labs and hospitals and pharmaceutical companies. And the work that I did, that was the beginning of the transition, because in that work, I was still doing lab work from the perspective of I was developing new applications for the instrumentation, demonstrating those applications to potential and existing clients and customers. But I was interacting with clients and customers. So it wasn't me being stuck in my own own lab doing my own work. And the more of that work that I did, the more I actually realized that what I really enjoyed was I love science and I love the research I had done during my PhD and the work I was doing as an application chemist. But what really drove me was actually engaging with students, with researchers, and facilitating and making their work succeed. So from that perspective, I actually started looking around and thinking, are there roles out there where I can balance those two things, be involved in the science and tech community, but from the perspective of facilitating innovation for others rather than doing the work myself. And so eventually I ended up transitioning, I like to say, to the dark side, to the not-for-profit sector. And my first role in that regard was with MyTax. So you guys are probably familiar with MyTax. Yep. And that was really the start of my transition from genuinely from the lab kind of into the boardroom, as you would say. I spent several years at MyTax, and there I really focused on expanding my network, on those skills that are really important, as you mentioned earlier. How do you deal with stakeholders? How do you deal with investors? How do you pitch? Because whether you're an entrepreneur or not, in the business world, in the boardroom, everyone is always pitching, whether it is a product or an idea or even a vision. And so I think what helped me most with that transition was building out the network, engaging with the innovation ecosystem, with innovators. And then I eventually found my way to OCI. And I joined OCI as a director of partnerships. And now I am the president and CEO. And that journey took about 10 years.
I really appreciated that that sort of history lesson, because you know, you facilitating industry academic collaboration and helping students and faculty and researchers, that's really the core thrust, or it has been the core thrust of OCI. So it's not unlikely necessarily that you go from MyTax to OCI, because terms like innovation ecosystem, and you don't have to say this, but I'll say this, like I feel they're almost coined by OCI, like, and built by OCI, and I always trip up and almost say OCE, but I'm gonna make a concerted effort to say OCI, but maybe like, can you talk about, and I mean, you've been there for some time now, it's definitely due to some of your vision of where OCI is now, but can you talk about how it plays a role in fostering sort of that innovation and industry academic partnerships in Ontario?
100%. If people look at OCI kind of on the surface, what they see are the various programs that OCI has that support collaborative R&D or support entrepreneurship or provide seed financing. But what OCI fundamentally is the 3 C's. So a connector, a convener, and a collaborator. And that's really the role that we play in the innovation ecosystem. Our business development team, which we like to say is our secret sauce, BDs go out across the province. They go into academic institutions. They speak to students. They speak to researchers. But they also go out into the investment community and speak to angel investors and VCs. And they go out and speak to companies and understand what the challenges are. And then with that, they bring potential collaborators together and help develop innovation projects, and then figure out, well, is there a program that either OCI has or some of our other partners have that can actually help support that innovation? But the real magic is bringing people together who maybe otherwise wouldn't have the opportunity to come together, and then the innovation that comes out of that is incredible. And if I look at our innovation ecosystem, in Ontario, it is truly special, not only in Canada, but I would say globally as well, because it is really built on this very solid concept of collaboration, whether it's industry academic collaboration or collaboration between small and big companies, or collaborations between industry, government, and the post-secondary sector. So the thing that OCI does is that kind of connect, collaborate, and convene function, which I think is really, really critical, because often if there is no opportunity to bring the right people together, then you miss out on the potential for tremendous things to happen.
And Claudia, you mentioned this like with the broader ecosystem here in Ontario, and I think Steve and I would both agree that it's world class. And you kind of talked about, I think a big reason for that is that collaborative nature. But beyond that point, you've had a great vantage point of the very innovative ecosystem we have here in Ontario through your role at OCI, but also your past role at MyTax. Can you maybe delve a little bit deeper into what makes this innovation ecosystem so special, and what really kind of sets it apart from other ecosystems across the world, and really makes what we have here in Ontario like something to aspire to in other parts of the world?
100%. The collaboration piece is really, really, really important. But I've already spoken to that. So what I want to focus on are a couple of other things that really make us unique. Talent. And the talent piece, I mean, we say it's world class, but actually it really is world class. So if you look at what Canada's recognized for, more specifically what Ontario is recognized for. So Ontario is recognized globally as a global center of excellence for AI talent and AI related fields. Ontario is also globally recognized as being a global center of excellence for quantum computing related talent. And then also, Ontario is considered to be one of the top 3 contributors to stem cell and regenerative medicine globally. So when we say that we have world-class talent, we have world-class talent that the world recognizes in 3, I just gave examples of 3 of the leading areas that are going to transform our world: AI, regenerative medicine and stem cells and quantum computing. And just on the AI piece, look at the ecosystem that has come out of Jeff Hinton's lab at U of T. If you look at who leads AI research globally, who heads research in Google's DeepMind, in at OpenAI, that is talent that originated in Ontario. Those are Jeff Hinton's students. Look at the amazing ecosystem across the province of startup companies that are now commercializing and developing new applications related to AI. And layer on top of that this really collaborative this collaboration that's built into the DNA of all of the stakeholders in the system. And then also all of the supports, I think, are unique. What makes us unique, all of the academic institutions have either on-campus accelerators, incubators, on-campus entrepreneurship activities. That is really unique and isn't found in all places that you might expect it to be found. Also the regional innovation centers, also the way companies engage. So, I mean, I'll stop. I could go on and on, but when we say this ecosystem is world-class, it really is world-class, and it is attracting international attention and international investment.
And I think it's important that that AI is now permeating every sector. It's not just a sector on its own. It's now permeating every sort of legacy sector, from mining to automotive, every sector that we have here in Ontario. One thing, I'm going to shift gears a little bit, but I think I wanted enough runway to talk about this because it was one of my favorite things when I worked at OCI. Listeners will know that that I used to work at OCE, now OCI, back in the day, and Discovery is back. And
yes,
I mean, let's celebrate that, because as a BD, I used to book like a third of the business we did for the year through connections that you make at Discovery. So we couldn't be more excited. Can you talk about Discovery X and what people can expect when they attend this April?
100%. We are super excited to be able to bring Discovery X back. The last time we ran it was in 2019, and then of course the pandemic 2020. So it feels incredible to be able to bring the event back at the same scale that we have been running it previously. It has always been a focal point for Ontario's innovation ecosystem. And what you can expect to see at Discovery X, April 17th to 18th at the Enercare Centre in Toronto, is the very best of what Ontario's innovators and innovation ecosystem stakeholders have on offer. So you will see the wow zone, you will see an AI zone, you will see a clean tech zone, you will see a med tech zone, advanced manufacturing zone, agri-food, mining. We're expecting about 300 exhibitors from across the province, some of the most exciting and innovative companies that we have that are coming out of the innovation ecosystem that we spoke about. We can expect investors. We're doing a great investor zone. We can expect some exciting things in terms of what we're going to have on the show floor, including, I hear you guys might be on the show floor doing a live podcast. So we are super excited about that, because innovation and innovators and where next happens, that's what Discovery X is. And so we would encourage anyone and everyone who is interested in seeing firsthand, up close, what Ontario's innovation ecosystem is about, what some of the most promising companies that are coming out of that innovation ecosystem in areas like automotive and mobility, AI, med tech, life sciences, et cetera. This is the place to be. And to your point, Steve, even before I joined OCI, one of the first Discovery events that I ever went to I immediately put it in my calendar for subsequent years because
Yeah.
literally in the span of a day or a day and a half, you can actually meet everyone in the province that you would otherwise have to spend many weeks or months trying to get together. So we hope to see, well, we're excited to see you guys there, and we hope to see everyone else there as well. And it goes back to that kind of connect, convene, and collaborate spirit that we're trying to bring back with the event.
Yeah, we're so excited this year that it's back, Claudia. Obviously I'd been, many times since I started. I came here in 2016, but this year, so Steve and I are coming back, and we're bringing one of our BDs who I think he had been hired a couple months before Discovery. So that was really like his first foray into, what the innovation ecosystem had to offer. But we're also bringing two other of our technical folks who have never been to Discovery. So I'm really excited to see, what their reactions are. I think the thing that Steve didn't tell you though is that he used to use Discovery as a de facto birthday party for himself because
no way.
his birthday always falls in the same year, but Discovery often kind of wrapped around his birthday, and so he would get all his colleagues from the innovation ecosystem here in Sudbury there, and then he'd throw this party for himself. So it was a great opportunity for him.
Well, looking forward to the invite and the party.
Yeah, well, you'll definitely be on the list. I don't know if everyone should attend, but we will have some festivities during that period.
Yeah, it's always a great time. But obviously, Claudia, we know that Discovery is the next big thing that we're kind of all looking forward to, and we want to kind of keep the focus on Discovery X. But if you could, what are some of the other things that OCI is working on right now that you're excited about that you're able to share at this point?
Sure. So the Critical Industrial Technologies Initiative. Earlier last year, the province announced the awards under a competition that it had ran related to critical technologies, and OCI was one of the recipients of funding. So the Critical Industrial Technologies Initiative is a 3-year, $50 million initiative that will be launching in the coming weeks, literally, and it has some really interesting components, including activities that probably would be of interest to your listeners. So we are going to be supporting a series of open access testing labs and regional technology development sites across 4 key sectors. So advanced manufacturing, the agri-food sector, the mining sector, and the construction sector. So there will be more to come on that. But the idea is that entrepreneurs and SMEs that are developing new applications that are powered by critical technologies like AI, like 5G and advanced networks, robotics, et cetera, will be able to get access to those technologies at access sites across the province so they can further develop their applications in those sectors. We are going to have a technology development and commercialization program that can support researchers and that can also support SMEs and companies that are looking to collaborate on the development of new technologies in those sectors. We're going to have challenge-based projects, and we're also going to have support for talent. So we're very, very excited about that. There's a lot of fantastic activity that is happening in those sectors where you see the convergence of technology, and specifically the convergence of advanced and critical technologies with, for example, in the mining sector, with some of the developments and advancements that are happening there. So I encourage everyone to keep an eye out, because there will be some great programming that will be coming out. And most importantly, there will be supports for innovators, for SMEs and entrepreneurs and researchers as a part of those initiatives, because what we really want to do is we want to accelerate the development of technologies in those sectors to help drive innovation and prosperity.
That's unreal. I mean, it's going to be a great support. I've had a chance to see a little bit of advanced information on this program, and I think it's going to really fill a need. Claudia, we thank you so much for joining us. I think the the exuberance you have for this is really shining through, and I think how keen you are about Discovery should attract a number of people to come if they weren't already coming. And I would encourage them to seek you out on the show floor, but I think you're going to have your running shoes on, running back between these different zones. But what maybe we'll leave our listeners with is just what you seem like a busy person. I see you on X at different announcements. But what do you do in your spare time? What's some of the things you like to do when you're not doing the good work at OCI?
So one of the things I really like to do is travel with my family. I have a 16-year-old son, and he has the travel bug like we do as well. And maybe I'll share this story. So last summer we went to California and we did the whole kind of Monterey, beautiful scenery.
Mhm.
But my son said, "Can we just spend a day or two in Silicon Valley?" Because he's really like into tech. And I'd been for work or business to Silicon Valley, but never for um, kind of pleasure or vacation. So we went. And one of the things that we saw, because we were tourists in Silicon Valley, is we went to that garage in Palo Alto where Bill Hewitt and Dave Packard founded HP in 1939. It blew my mind because it's a garage. It was a
Yeah.
beautiful craftsman type kind of home. And I thought, oh, I'd like to live here. It's kind of nice, but literally in the back was like a little garage. And when you think where HP is today, so even though in my spare time I love to travel, that tech bug is
Yeah.
there, and it was really awesome and cool to see that garage. And there's a little plaque, and on that little plaque it says that this was the birthplace of Silicon Valley. And my mind just went, oh my God, that is just so cool. And my son was impressed as well. So love to travel in my spare time, but always seeking out tech, I guess.
Yeah, it's funny because people always talk about work-life balance, but I feel like I'm the same way. When we go traveling, I always end up dragging my wife to something about some kind of technology, and she has to put up with it. But definitely share your love of travel. So uh, hopefully you get some good time this summer to do more traveling. Um, Claudia, it was great to have you on. I know that more people will be enticed to seek out Discovery, and we can't wait to see you there. And we'll be announcing in the next few weeks who we'll be interviewing on the show floor live as part of the Unlikely Innovators at Discovery X. So thank you so much for taking the time and joining
Yeah.
Mike and
Thank
I
you,
today.
Claudia.
Thank you so much. Really enjoyed the discussion. Looking forward to seeing you guys at Discovery X, and looking forward to seeing your listeners at Discovery X as well.
Awesome.
We're excited.
Thanks.
Can't wait.
Yep.
Thanks,
Thanks so
Claudia.
much.
Thanks.
Well, that was a great interview, Steve, with Claudia. One of the things I wanted to mention earlier in the podcast, but it didn't, we'd moved on to not greener pastures, but I think me
Different
bringing
topics?
different topics, me bringing it up would have been incredibly self-serving and derailing of the conversation. But that's, I'm a veteran podcast host at this point, so I know when to
Yeah,
save
and it
those little
shows.
nuggets.
It shows.
And it certainly does. But it was funny though when Claudia talked about like when she had her moment in academia, when
Yeah.
she realized this is not for me. The moment that I had was after going through the peer review process for journals, when I realized if this is what it's going to be like to write anything, I want out of this, right? And so
Took the love of writing out of it for you,
oh,
right?
it hurts, man. And I mean,
Yeah.
you've been through it as well, and it's
Yeah.
it's tough sledding. So kudos to those that still do it. It's not for me, and I'm fine with that. But again, I ended up in academia anyway, working at Cambridge College, but just in a different realm. But I'm not gonna let you off the hook because
I have a question for you. You go
sure.
ahead.
No, ask your question first. And
Okay, you're very good at wrapping these things up, these podcasts with really nice probing questions. I was thinking of one for you. We've been to OCI Discover, you and I, a few times. One of my keenest memories that is so OCI and so Discovery stems from a deal that OCE at the time did with
Ferrero Rocher.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So with the hazelnut growers of Ontario, led to like a whole host of hazelnut type products being available free at the conference floor. And I just remember as I worked at OCE, being in the background, seeing pallets and pallets of Ferrero Rochers coming to the show floor. So I wanted to ask you, like, what's a very OCI Discovery X memory that you have from the show floor, and you can't use the Ferrero Rocher now?
Well, I mean, it's funny because I have notes here from when we were talking to Claudia, and like one of the notes I wrote for the outro was Ferrero Rocher because
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
again, we should have asked her about that because I don't want to, but we will say, Claudia, if you can bring Ferrero Rocher back
Yeah.
in the abundance that it was, great. If not, that's also fine. I don't need a diet of Ferrero Rocher for like 3 days, because that was my breakfast, lunch, and well, not dinner, but like it was
breakfast and lunch. Yeah.
Breakfast and lunch for sure, but no Ferrero Rocher. But you've set me up perfectly, because the other thing that is probably one of my favorite memories of Discovery X, and I probably shared this on the podcast previously, but I can do it again now because we have new listeners every year and they need to hear these stories. Is
Okay.
Steve mentioned earlier that like older folks such as himself, these were some of the memories they had of Discovery. And I mentioned how Steve used to use Discovery, as a way to bring together his closest friends and colleagues to have a birthday party. And the last Discovery that we went to in 2019, I think I might have had Mike Gundy's like famous rant where he says, "I'm a man, I'm 40" on my mind.
That's
And
right.
it was
That's where
Steve's,
it came from.
That's where it came from. And it was Steve's birthday the day after Discovery had wrapped, and I was spending my day at OCI at the time. We used to get together after the conference and meet with all the other colleges. And I put out a tweet that with a picture of Steve doing karaoke, and my tweet was along the lines of like, "Happy 40th birthday to this beauty," and then I tagged him. And then the tweet, it didn't blow up, but enough people had commented on it with like saying "Happy birthday, Steve," and then they came up to you and said like, "Wow, like you look great for 40," which implied that like maybe you didn't look great because at the time you're only
32.
32 years old. And so it became a running joke that, in conference years, Steve is actually, 45 years old now at this point, when in reality, Steve is actually younger than I am. And I'm not 40 yet as of right now. And as of Discovery in a couple of weeks. But like, that was one of my favorite memories. And again, people were like, why is it a bad thing that he's 40? It's like, well, it wasn't a bad thing. It was just this meme that we tapped into. But the fact that so many people believed that you were 40, I think is what made it funnier. I think it just speaks to how, dignified and sophisticated you look, my friend, that people would have thought you were a spry looking 40-year-old man, but you of course are not. So that's probably my single favorite memory of Discovery X. I'm sure that's not what Claudia would want us to say. Of course, it's the connections and convening and meeting people there. But for me personally, celebrating your 40th birthday in 2019 is great. So I can't wait to do 45 in a couple weeks.
Well, there you go. That's nice. I'm glad that's your favorite memory. My memory was the birthday party, but I guess the tweet is a close second.
Yes.
But yeah, for me, always seeing you eating a bag of popcorn is a good one, because
that is
there's
my
always
conference
inevitably
conference move.
when there isn't Ferrero Rochers, of course. And then of course, if you recall, when that android was doing the keynote speech, that was neat.
Mm-hmm.
Forget her name.
I'm like, I try to be like the character, like Brad Pitt's character in Ocean's 11. If you go back and watch that movie, every single scene that he's in, he's eating something, and that's me at a conference. So
yeah,
I aspire to that. So.
Yeah. So anyway, thanks again to Claudia. Do go to Discovery X. It is definitely worth your while. Even if you haven't been before and you don't think that's your scene, I guarantee if you're in Ontario Tech, it is your scene, and you should check it out on April 17th and 18th of this year. So thanks again to Claudia. We'll be back next time with another podcast.
And we'll see you at Discovery X.
See you there.